The wind howled across the white plains as the last human settlement clung to the edges of survival. The snow never stopped falling anymore. It covered roofs, buried paths, and silenced the forests. Elias stood on the outer wall, his fur-lined coat crusted with frost and his breath fogging the air in front of him. The sun was only a faint disk through the haze, and the world seemed frozen in time. He had heard stories of travelers who vanished in the cold never to return, and some said the snow itself consumed their souls. Elias was not a soldier, though he carried a rifle. He was a watchman, one of the few left to keep watch for threats that rarely came anymore. There had been no bandit raids in years, no supply convoys, no word from the southern cities. The radio crackled with static, and the towers had long gone dark. The snow had taken everything, yet Elias waited, because that was his duty. Something deep within him whispered that one day something would emerge from that white emptiness, and that he must be there to see it. That day came without warning. Through the mist and the endless fall of flakes, Elias saw movement far beyond the fence line. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, a wandering deer, or a drifting shadow. But then the figure grew clearer, a tall silhouette cloaked in crimson that cut through the white like fire. His hands gripped the rifle tightly. No one traveled this far north. The roads were dead, the maps erased. Whoever this was did not belong here. He climbed down from the wall, his boots crunching in the ice. The wind tugged at his hood and the cold bit into his face. The figure walked slowly, deliberately, and when it drew near, Elias could see it more clearly. The cloak was red but not cloth. It shimmered faintly, as if alive with veins of light pulsing beneath the surface. The figure stopped just outside the gate and raised its head. Beneath the hood, a face unlike any Elias had seen before glimmered pale and smooth like glass, with eyes that burned softly in gold. Elias swallowed and lifted his rifle. "Stay where you are," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. The figure tilted its head slightly, then spoke in a calm, melodic voice that carried even through the wind. "I seek the human named Elias of the Northern Watch." The sound of his name in that alien tone sent a chill deeper than the frost. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure slowly lowered the hood, revealing more of the strange face. It was neither man nor woman, but something in between, ageless and radiant. "I am the Red Envoy," it said, "and your world is nearing its end. I come bearing the last message from beyond the veil of frost." Elias lowered the rifle, a little unsure whether to laugh or tremble. He had heard stories of envoys from the stars during the old wars. Most of humanity had dismissed them as myths. Now one stood before him in the storm. "You have the wrong man," he muttered. "I am just a guard." But the envoy shook its head. "You are not just a guard. You are the chosen keeper of a signal long dormant. The fate of both our peoples depends on you." The words made no sense, yet something inside Elias stirred as though a forgotten memory had been called back. He felt the pulse of something old inside his chest. The envoy reached out a hand, and when it touched the gate, the frost melted beneath its fingers. "Let me in, Elias," it said softly. "The storm grows hungry. It will not wait." Elias hesitated but opened the gate. The Red Envoy stepped inside, moving with fluid grace like a shadow flowing over the snow. The villagers who saw it from afar crossed themselves and hurried indoors. They whispered of omens of fire and judgment. Elias led the stranger toward the guardhouse, where a fire burned weakly in the stove. The envoy stood by it for a moment, watching the flames with something like curiosity. "It has been long since I felt warmth," it said. Elias poured water into a cup and handed it over, though he wasn't sure the being could even drink. "You said you came for me. Why?" The envoy looked up, its golden eyes reflecting the firelight. "Because your kind began what mine could not finish. The snowfall engine that you built to stabilize your dying skies has broken. It draws energy from the core of the planet, and soon the core will fail. The snow will never stop until all heat is gone. You have 3 days before the final collapse begins." Elias stared at it, unable to process the words. "That machine was made before I was born. No one here even knows where it is." The envoy nodded. "And yet you will find it. It calls to you through the field of resonance that connects our worlds. You carry the key fragment, though you do not yet understand." It reached into its cloak and withdrew a small crystal shaped like a shard of frozen flame. It pulsed faintly when brought near him. Elias felt warmth through his chest as if his heart recognized it. The envoy placed the shard on the table between them. "This is yours by right of the bond between human and envoy. It was lost during the War of the Sun Line, but it has found its bearer again." Elias shook his head slowly. "I don't know anything about that. I am no hero." The envoy smiled faintly. Neither was the first human who built the engine. He too was a watchman who believed the sky would never change. Outside, the storm raged harder. The snow slammed against the windows and the lights flickered. The settlement shuddered as if the land itself groaned. The envoy turned toward the sound, its eyes narrowing. "It begins. The pulse of the core has shifted. We must move before dawn." Elias blinked. "Move where?" "To the place where your destiny sleeps. South across the frozen valley to the ruins of the observatory. There lies the heart of the machine." Elias looked at the storm outside and thought of the miles of deadly snow. "You will die out there," he said. The envoy gave a faint smile. "I am already dying, Elias. My mission ends only when yours begins." That night they prepared what little they could carry. Elias told the elder of the settlement that he was leaving. The old man shook his head and muttered that the snow had finally taken his mind. But Elias felt something burn inside him, a certainty that if he stayed, all would be lost anyway. Before dawn, he and the envoy set out into the endless white. The world outside the fence was silent and vast. The snow reached to their knees and the wind tore at their faces. The envoy walked as though untouched by the cold, its cloak glowing faintly through the darkness. Elias followed, keeping his rifle slung and the shard hanging around his neck on a leather strap. With each step, he felt the crystal thrum in rhythm with his heartbeat, guiding him toward something unseen. By midday, the storm eased, and they came upon the frozen remains of an old highway. Rusted vehicles lay half-buried beneath the snow. The envoy paused by one, touching the metal softly. "Your people built such strong things, and yet they all fall silent in time." Elias nodded. "We built for survival, not forever." "Forever is not the goal," said the envoy. "Continuance is. Yet continuance requires harmony, not conquest. That is why we came to you long ago, and why you sealed the gates between worlds when fear overtook reason." Elias frowned. "You mean humans and your kind knew each other before?" "Yes. We shared the same origin once before division took root. But the snowfall engine changed everything. Its power tore apart the bridge that connected us. They walked in silence after that until night fell. They built a small camp within the wreck of an overturned bus. The firelight flickered across the walls and cast long shadows. The envoy sat still, eyes closed as though meditating. Elias watched it for a long time before asking, "What happens if we fail to fix the engine?" The envoy opened its eyes slowly. "Then the heart of your world will freeze, and with it mine. The snowfall will consume both realities. The stars will dim, and no voice will remain to remember." Elias looked at the shard hanging on his chest. "And you're sure I'm the one who can stop it?" "I do not choose the chosen, Elias. The call does. You answered when you looked beyond the wall and refused to turn away." He lay awake long after the envoy fell silent. The snow hissed softly against the bus, and somewhere deep within the storm he thought he heard faint whispers like the world speaking through the wind. When sleep finally came, it was filled with visions of fire beneath the ice and a great machine turning endlessly in the dark. At dawn, they resumed their journey. The valley stretched before them vast and lifeless. Frozen rivers wound through jagged cliffs, and the sky glowed faintly with aurora. The shard grew warmer against his skin. The envoy moved faster now, as if drawn by the same pulse. By midday, they reached a chasm spanned by a broken bridge. Below it, the earth glowed faintly red. Steam rose from cracks in the ice. "The world's heart lies beneath," said the envoy. "The engine feeds from its veins. We are close." Elias climbed carefully over the fractured beams. The wind howled through the gap, and ice broke under his boots. Halfway across, a tremor shook the ground. The bridge groaned. Elias clung to a beam as chunks of ice fell into the fiery mist below. The envoy reached for him, extending a glowing hand. "Take it. Trust me." He hesitated only a moment before grasping it. A surge of warmth shot through him, and together they crossed to the other side as the bridge collapsed behind them. They reached a plateau where ancient towers rose half-buried in snow. The observatory loomed ahead, its domes shattered but still standing. Strange symbols lined the walls, faintly glowing through the frost. "This place is older than your history admits," said the envoy. "Here your ancestors built the first bridge to our realm, and here they sealed it when fear consumed them." Elias followed into the ruins. Inside, the air was warmer, faintly humming with unseen energy. The floor's pool. The light from the engine filled the cavern like dawn rising beneath the earth. Elias stood at its center, his shadow stretching long across the molten floor. The shard on the altar pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and every pulse sent a wave of warmth through his veins. The frost on his coat melted. The rifle slung across his shoulder glowed faintly from the heat. He could feel life stirring in the world above, yet the silence that followed was not peace. It was waiting. He looked down at the place where the envoy had vanished. The red dust was gone, absorbed into the air as though it had never existed. For the first time in his life, he felt utterly alone, yet he also felt a strange certainty that the envoy was still with him in some unseen form. The glow of the crystal deepened, and a whisper echoed in his mind, not as words but as a pulse of feeling. It guided him toward the far wall where an ancient door waited, sealed by ice thicker than steel. Elias approached the door and placed his hand against it. The metal hummed. The shard around his neck vibrated in answer. With a deep groan, the door split open, revealing a corridor bathed in red light. At the end of it, something vast moved like a sleeping beast awakening from a dream. The hum of machinery turned into a low chant of power. Elias walked slowly forward, boots sinking into melted frost. The air shimmered with heat. He realized the engine was not only awakening, but evolving. It was building something new. At the corridor's end stood a platform overlooking an abyss of molten light. From its depths rose pillars of machinery that turned like living bones. Elias gazed down in awe. Within the center of the abyss, a heart of flame beat slowly. Each pulse sent tremors through the mountain. He understood now that this was the true core of the world, the source of both life and the endless snow. The engine was no mere device. It was a bridge between two realms. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You are late, Elias of the Northern Watch." He turned, searching the air, but saw no one. The voice was deep, resonant, and filled with a tone that carried both age and sorrow. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am the guardian of the engine," said the voice. "I was created when your ancestors built this place. I was meant to maintain the balance between warmth and frost, between life and death. But when your people fled, I was left alone, and the snow claimed my will. Now you have reawakened me, but the equilibrium is broken." Elias gritted his teeth. "Tell me how to restore it." "To restore it, you must do what the first builder could not. You must unite the pulse of the human heart with the energy of the bridge. Only then will the flow be stable. But the price is your life." The words struck him like cold steel. "My life? The shard within you is the key. When it merges with the core, it will anchor the flow, but your essence will bind to it. You will become part of the engine forever." Elias felt the weight of the decision press upon him. The storm above the surface still raged, and he could feel through the vibrations that the world was not yet saved. He thought of the villagers clinging to their huts, praying for light. He thought of the envoy who had given everything for this chance. If he turned away now, the world would die. Slowly he nodded. "Tell me what I must do." The voice seemed to sigh like wind through ancient halls. "Step forward and place the shard upon your heart. Then walk into the flame." Elias closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He touched the shard hanging from his neck. It pulsed softly, almost like it understood. He removed his coat, letting it fall onto the stone. The heat washed over him, yet he did not burn. His skin glowed faintly red from the reflection of the light. He stepped toward the edge of the abyss where molten energy spiraled upward like a living river. "For the world," he whispered. "For all of us." He pressed the shard to his chest. A blinding surge of light erupted through his body. He cried out not in pain, but in release. The shard sank into his flesh, merging with his heartbeat. The world around him blurred into streaks of red and white. He stepped into the fire. For a moment there was silence. Then a sound like thunder filled the cavern. The heart of the engine flared brighter than the sun, and a wave of energy burst outward, racing through the mountain, through the soil, and into the skies above. The The storm that had covered the world for generations began to break apart. Clouds split and sunlight poured through the gaps for the first time in centuries. The snow turned to mist, and rivers began to flow again. Far above the surface, the people of the settlement looked to the horizon and saw the sky burning crimson, then gold. They fell to their knees, weeping for warmth. The elder whispered that the old prophecy had come true, that the red star had returned. None of them knew what sacrifice had made it possible. Beneath the earth, the guardian spoke again, though its voice was now softer, filled with something like gratitude. He is gone, yet not gone. The human has joined the current. The balance returns. For countless days, the light continued to spread across the world. The oceans thawed. The forests began to breathe. And deep within the engine, something new was forming. The core that had consumed Elias now pulsed with two lights, one red and one gold. From that union, a new consciousness began to awaken. It was neither human nor Envoy, but both. It remembered the snow, the fear, the duty, and the promise. It remembered the voice of the Envoy saying, "Remember what you are, Elias." Slowly, it opened its eyes. The engine no longer needed a guardian, for the guardian was now alive within the machine itself. It reached through the currents of energy and felt the beating of a living world above. For the first time, it understood eternity not as endlessness, but as purpose fulfilled. Years passed, though time lost meaning in the warmth of renewal. The snow melted into rivers that carried life to forgotten lands. New settlements rose from the ruins. The people told stories of the Red Envoy and the human who faced the storm together. They built shrines of red glass to honor the sacrifice. In those shrines, candles burned day and night. And when the wind blew through them, faint music filled the air as if whispering from another world. One night, beneath a sky of returning stars, a young girl wandered. Beyond the village fence, she followed a strange glow that shimmered across the snowfields. It led her to a mound of stone where a single red crystal jutted from the ground. It pulsed faintly with warmth. She reached out and touched it. At her touch, the light brightened and a voice whispered softly in her mind, "Do not fear the storm. The fire within you will always find its way." She smiled and ran back to the village, carrying the warmth in her hands. In the depths of the earth, the engine continued to turn. The merged spirit of Elias and the Envoy watched over both worlds, maintaining the balance. Across the stars, the realm of the Envoys felt the echo of that rebirth. The bridge between realities reopened. From their crimson citadels, they looked upon the renewed planet with reverence. The eldest among them spoke a single truth. The human has ascended beyond fear. The bond is restored. In the centuries that followed, humanity rebuilt its cities not as fortresses, but as sanctuaries. The people learned to live with the land instead of against it. Machines no longer drained the heart of the earth, but harmonized with its pulse. The memory of the endless winter became legend. Yet every generation retold the story of the Red Envoy who came through the snow and the human who realized his destiny had found him. The tale was carved into walls, sung in songs, and whispered to children before sleep. But deep within the consciousness of the engine, Elias still existed. He drifted through streams of light, aware of every heartbeat upon the surface. Sometimes he felt the laughter of children in the warmth of the sun. Sometimes he felt the tears of loss when storms returned. And whenever someone stood alone beneath falling snow, he reached out through the wind and whispered, "You are not forgotten." The fire endures. Then one day an anomaly appeared within the engine's flow. A signal, faint yet familiar, pulsed from beyond the horizon of reality. It was a voice of red light carrying words across dimensions. "Elias, the bridge is ready. It is time to come home." The sound filled him with longing. It was the voice of the Envoy renewed within another world. Through the bond that united them, she called across the divide. The engine responded, opening a rift of golden fire. Elias stepped through not as flesh, but as energy, pure and luminous. He found himself standing once more in a field of crimson snow beneath skies of twin suns. The Envoy stood before him whole and radiant as when they first met. "You kept your promise," she said. He smiled, though he no longer needed breath. "You found me again." "Always," she replied. Around them, the red field shimmered with light from both worlds merging. The cold wind carried no sorrow, only peace. The Envoy reached out her hand, and he took it. Together they looked upon the horizon where the human and Envoy worlds intertwined like twin flames. The future stretched endless before them, yet neither feared it, for destiny was no longer a burden. It was a bond eternal and alive. The Envoy spoke softly. "Will you stay?" Elias gazed toward the distant stars where the light of the restored world shone. "I will stay until the last flame fades, and then I will light it again." She nodded. "Then the balance will never fail." And so they walked together across the snow that no longer burned with cold but with warmth. Their steps left trails of light that wove into constellations above. The legends that would come later would call them the keepers of the two suns. Some said they watched over travelers lost in blizzards. Others claimed